Yes, I have made a few loans in my life to race drivers and car owners, and let me tell you one thing. Every single one that I made was paid back, whether they went bankrupt or not, because the racing people are real down-to-earth people, and that's why I am still as happy as it could be to be involved in racing. Just a great bunch of people. Now for the prepared remarks. It's so nice to see all of you dedicated members of our auto racing family here today to honor the 2005 inductees into the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. You know what? It's because of you that this event takes place. And I encourage you to spread the word and never, never give up your interest as well as your support of these kind of events. After all, it was because of you that we have this wonderful history, and you should be quite proud of the contributions each of you have made to our sport and the warm memories that we have been sharing here today. I and so many others sincerely appreciate everything you did. I know it was a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, very little financial reward, if any, and many difficult sacrifices which you had to make along the way. But it was so very, very special, even though we didn't know how very special it was at the time we were doing it. It was exciting and it was enjoyable, especially when we did well. We might have won a heat, even a feature race, a few of us. I tried it for a couple of years. I finished second to Bentley one time. That was my best on the track. I decided it was time to go back into the box office. Maybe I could do something better with some cash instead of trying to drive a race car. And one more thing. I doubt that I would be standing here today if I had not grown up near the Pine Speedway in Groveland, Mass, way back in the 40s and the 50s. Well, anyway, here I am, and I'm thrilled that I was asked to have the honor of reminding you about the many accomplishments of one of this year's inductees into the Hall of Fame. He was certainly one of the most talented drivers, and without doubt, one of the all-time greats of the 50s and the 60s. Let's hear it one more time from the gentleman racer from Pelham, New Hampshire, Nate Smokey Boutwell. Thank you so much for your attention. It won't be much longer. Today they call Tony Stewart Smoke, but in my book, Nate Boutwell was the original Smoke. And if you measure success by race wins, then the original Smokey, the one with the Y on the end, and over 200 feature event victories, comes out far ahead. I'm sure that many of you here today that either raced against Nate or watched him compete will agree with that statement. I cannot do Smokey's fantastic racing career justice in the next couple of minutes, but I will try to give you a glimpse of some of his many, many achievements. Nate Boutwell was born into a large family in the tiny town of Pelham, New Hampshire in the early 30s. He lost his dad when he was only 5 years old. When he was of age, he joined the Marines. In the Marines, he was assigned to the motor pool and began honing his skills as a welder and a precision driver. He was sent overseas to Korea, and because of his driving talent, designated as the personal driver for a high-ranking colonel. Although unconfirmed, it was said that Nate had the fastest hopped-up Jeep in the motor pool, and he was undefeated in the Korean Mud Bowl races during his tour of duty. Couldn't prove that fact, but that's what I understand. Upon returning to the States, he and a couple of Marine buddies went to a sprint car race at a muddy dirt track down in the Carolinas. Announcement was made that a car owner was looking for an experienced driver. Well, Nate's buddies went to the car owner and told him that Nate had plenty of experience and was a real good wheelman, especially on muddy tracks. Of course, they failed to tell the car owner that this experience came in Korea driving one of those Jeeps. Anyways, Nate got into the sprint car, drove it quite well, and finished the race. No, he didn't win. But that's all it took to hook him on the racing bug that he never fully got out of his system. Once out of the service, he returned to Pelham and got hooked up with his soon-to-be brother-in-law, Bobby Edwards, who was building a car for the Manchester, Hudson, and Pines URDC circuit. It was during this period that he acquired the nickname Smokey. How? Well, Nate always had a cigarette or a cigar burning while working on his stock car in the tiny basement of Bobby Edwards' home. One night, Bobby looked up at all the smoke hovering around the car and said, "Nate, I think you're going to smoke 'em this weekend." Well, he did smoke 'em that weekend, and the name Smoke with a Y on the end stuck, and everyone began to call him Smokey. And he did indeed smoke the competition for the next 16 years or so. Here are some of the cars he campaigned around many of the New England and New York tracks. In 1954, he built his own number 401 Ford Coupe. He jumped from that car into the 26 of Johnny Duggan. That ride earned him the opportunity to drive the number 23 and occasionally the number 24. It was an open cockpit, big car, on the dirt at Essex Junction, Vermont, over in Keene, New Hampshire, and Claremont, New Hampshire, all dirt tracks. Having achieved quite a bit of early success, he began to drive the number 11 of Paul Abbott, and then into the Flying 5 of Ed Bowley. In fact, Bowley prepared a midget that Smokey drove from time to time during the 1958 season. Smokey then moved on to the number 8 and the M8, owned by Rocky Hinton, and he also drove the 24 of Junior Prescott before getting back together with the Duggan brothers, driving the radical and unbeatable 1/3 rail car. And that was quite a machine. After another winning season with Ed Bowley, he hooked up with Jack Arute and the Garuti brothers in 1965, driving the potent number 14 and 28 for the next 5 full seasons. Let me quote from an article on Smokey that appeared 47 years ago in the Lowell Sun, written by another one of today's deserving inductees, Sammy Weisberg. Sam, I'm going to give you the article afterwards and remind you of what you wrote in 1958. But here's what you had to say about Smokey. Smokey is one of the most versatile drivers in the sport. He has already wheeled just about every type of speedway car: midgets, big cars, stock cars, late model stocks, and has even participated in a number of motorcycle hill climbing events. The Pelham driver had a banner season in 1956 when he won 37 feature events in the stock cars. He has driven at about every track, dirt or asphalt, in New England, end quote. And as the song says, it had only just begun. A few of the highlights from Smokey's sensational career include the 1955 and 56 Pines and Hudson Speedway champion, 1957, the Norwood Modified champion, 1957, he was the Westboro Speedway champion, 1959, the Atlantic Auto Racing champion at the West Peabody Speedway. In 1959, he was elected to the Oilsome Hall of Fame, and in 1959, winner of the Canadian-American International Classic at Dover, New Hampshire Speedway. A race that Smokey always talked about and was quite proud of. In 1960, he won the Empire State 250 lap at Menands, New York Speedway. He nosed out Ernie Gahan, Pete Corey, Rennie Charland, and Red Foot for that big win. In 1960, he finished as the runner-up to the season champion at Westboro. 1961, one of the biggest events in his life occurred when wife Judy gave birth to twins, daughter Patty and son Lee. Leave it to Smokey. One wasn't enough. He had to double up. 1962, he was a runner-up to the champion at the Norwood Arena. 1963, he won 21 feature events at the Pines, Hudson, Westboro, and Dover, driving that fantastic rail car, sponsored by Wilmington Ford. Smokey was always very partial to Ford power. In 1964, him and Rocky Hinton took a little ride down to Daytona. They finished 20th in the Daytona 500, and they ran 14th in the 100-lap qualifying race. Actually, the year before they went to Daytona, but they wouldn't allow the car to run. And I personally had some experience when we used to take cars back in those days down to the south to run. The Southerners didn't like the Yankees coming down, especially if the car looked like it might go. So they usually found a way of stopping you from racing. But in '64, he did drive a Ford, and he did quite well, finishing 20th. Yeah, at the end of '64, he jumped into the number 24 of Junior Prescott at Norwood Arena, and he nosed out. You know who he nosed out in 1964, right near the end of the season? It was Pete Hamilton. And in 1964, his second biggest event of his life occurred when wife Judy did it again, and Nate Jr. was born. A couple other little notes. In 1969, he won the 150-lap Fall Classic at Stafford Speedway. In 1969, he was also the Stafford Speedway champion, and that year he finished third at Thompson. Smokey then retired his trademark red shirt, bright red driving suit, and his not-so-famous Hush Puppy driving shoes at the end of the 1969 season to spend more time with Judy and the kids. In retirement, Smokey took up flying airplanes, running a small welding shop, and politics, serving as a selectman in his hometown of Pelham, New Hampshire, until a heart condition slowed him down. A couple of weeks ago, I paid a visit to Nate Jr. at his small welding shop in Pelham, New Hampshire. He certainly was a chip off the old big block, because he too displayed the natural driving talent of Dad by winning 2 season championships in the ultra-fast super-modified division at both the Star and the Lee Speedways in the early 90s. A couple of things Junior said to me as we did some bench racing next to the hot stove for a couple of hours in his shop. It was really neat growing up in a town where everybody seemed to know and respect your dad, and even Mom too. Also, Junior told me that when his dad watched him race, his dad was so nervous that he would close his eyes and start eating his nitro pills. Unfortunately, Smokey and Judy passed away more than a decade ago. And shortly thereafter, Nate Jr. hung up his championship helmet in retirement. Junior told me that he often thinks and really misses those Sunday morning breakfasts with his family when the major focus of the conversation was what happened at the races the night before. Didn't we all enjoy that experience at one time or another? I know the answer is yes. Now, if I would please have Smokey's sons, Lee, Nate Jr., along with Ray Gendron, a longtime and close friend, to come forward, and I want to present him with the Hall of Fame trophy. Right down here in front, boys. Let's hear it, Smokey Boutwell.
Thanks, Ken Smith. That was wonderful. I had a good time chatting with you the other day in front of the wood stove there. Looking back at one of the pictures that of my father, his famous red T-shirt fire suit had to be converted over. They changed the rules, and you had to have a fire suit, a genuine fire suit. And so when I started getting involved in racing, I asked my father, "Dad, do you think I could borrow your fire suit?" And his words were, "Whatever you do, don't get next to any fire with that thing, or you'll be in trouble." But I could go on and on for a long time here, telling great stories about a wonderful father and great parents that I had. My family has been fantastic, supportive of my father and my racing career. And I'd like to thank the NEAR organization for the great work they've done. My family will honor this for a long time. Thank you very much.